Right. Come on. All right, here we are, wrapping up from Dreamforce 2021. As you can see behind me, they're in the process of packing up, and my colleague,
should we tell them what happened?
Yeah,
Talk about the crowds? Oh, scary, guys. We tried to get in. As you know, there's only 1,000 special Dreamforce people that got to go this year. So we tried some different attempts to get in. And this was one of them. Oh, sorry, guys. So, Dave, what did we try? We tried,
couldn't fit in the suit.
we tried security.
Nah, didn't. It was funny. We enjoyed it.
I tried to get in Dreamforce to get special video just from us, but it didn't take place. But on to the seriousness tonight. Obviously, you can see it's closing down. We're here, and we're going to tell you some of the stuff that we got from them. Dave, why don't you tell me about what you thought about the crowd this year as compared to other years?
I was just pulling out my list of notes. Yeah, obviously it was a lot smaller. So the Dreamforce, for those of you who don't know, this year was limited to 1,000 people. It was invitation only, so they selected MVPs. Obviously, key customers were there. Some consulting partners were there. We couldn't get in, although we tried.
We gave it a go.
We were right next door, looking across the fence into the courtyard. I've got some video of that I'll post.
We were very close. We were close.
We were close, but we didn't get in. And rightfully, I mean, I think the requirements were pretty strict to be able to break in and take a look at Dreamforce. But
just thinking about that, Dave, what about doing something different to get some other folks access? Maybe a lottery or something, so some folks that weren't in the chosen few might have gotten some opportunities.
Yeah, and I'll talk a bit about that, because what they did do this year, particularly extensively, was stream Dreamforce. So every year they've had a stream of Dreamforce from San Francisco here. This year they did that as well, but there was tweaks on it. There were some extra channels, and along the way during the conference they launched a streaming service that will be ongoing called Salesforce Plus. So I joined, aside from being locally here, I joined the online conference on day 1 and 2 for around half the day. At the opening, the streaming service had a few glitches. It crashed, although I'm in San Francisco with gigabit Ethernet. It did crash 6 or 7 times for those of you who didn't join. They seemed to sort out those problems later in the morning, and then the streaming service stayed up pretty much permanently. They began the conference online with a chat box, and it was pretty much open slather on the chat, which was an interesting choice. Most of the chat messages were around how do the attendees online get access to their free Disney Plus trial. And I swear, if I didn't see 10,000 requests for Disney Plus, then I wasn't watching. There was a little bit of dissension amongst who got to go here today. So some of the customers I did recognize in chat were complaining that they didn't get the option to go. So David, as you were saying, I mean, if I was asked and no one asked my advice, I would probably have held a lottery for tickets to go, at least a portion of the tickets, so everyone had a fair chance rather than just exclude, just personally select attendees. So I think a lottery would be a good idea. The chat got shut down around halfway through the day because there was obviously a lot of Disney Plus requests and a little bit of negativity. And a moderator took over and really just put up comments himself and asked people to like or dislike the comments. So I think in terms of advice on the stream, I think if you're going to have a chat box, you need to decide on policies for those things up front. But all in all, the streaming service was pretty good. The new channels are interesting. You can pull up sessions on demand and watch some of them now as well. And it's been branded Salesforce Plus, and it will be ongoing, I assume, from now on. So take a look at that online. I feel like an advertiser.
Yeah, your Salesforce. You got to put your Salesforce logo on there. Oh, we didn't try that. We should have tried that.
Yeah.
So anyways, there was a lot of great things that happened in the event, even though it was kind of short and was online. But were there any announcements that really stood out to you that we should talk about?
Yes, funny stuff. So the biggest one, obviously the biggest announcement this year was the integration of Slack with the Salesforce platform. And I'm sure there'll be more to hear from that over time.
Sure.
Slack and Salesforce has already announced a number of initiatives integrating the CRM with the Slack engine. My business, Sentia, is a Salesforce partner, and we certainly made a switch from Teams to Slack after we acquisition went through,
Mm.
trying to eat the dog food, stay on platform. I think Slack has a lot of advantages over Teams. I think the Salesforce acquisition, at the time, I quietly to myself, I questioned the logic of it. But now that I've seen some of the integrations, I think it's going to be strategically a very good move for Salesforce. I think Slack makes a lot of sense. Trying to allow people to live on the Slack interface and yet pull their records from Salesforce will be a big advantage. And I think it will be, as people get used to the idea, I think it will be very powerful. So
how does Sentia work with Slack? I mean, if a customer is talking to you, that integration is now done. So how would that affect a Sentia-based customer integrating Slack?
So our application Sentia acts as an upgrade, I guess, to the standard Sales Cloud app in Salesforce. We configure it for every customer, but what it does is generate a whole lot of insights. So through the day for a sales user, Sentia is generating cards saying, call this person, it's time to email this one. These are the values of each of these prospects or accounts. So if you've got 15 things to do today and an hour left in the day, you should do these 3 first. It also tracks a lot of your performance and targets and how you're tracking against those and benchmark you against your teammates. So all that information gets pushed to Slack as well. So within Slack, you can have a running commentary from Sentia, our app, telling you what to do each day on the Slack interface as well with this integration with Salesforce. So I think it's good for us as well at Sentia. So that was the first big, I guess it was announced pre-Dreamforce, but that was the first big initiative that covered a lot of the agenda at Dreamforce. There was a couple of others. Salesforce have had a backup facility on the platform for a while. You can schedule a backup and have it emailed to you, a backup of all your data as a system admin. And at Dreamforce this year, they've announced an expansion of that ability with backup and restore. So you're able to generate a restore of your data if something goes wrong, or if you just want to step back to a certain point in time, which would be good in a sandbox for testing. So backup and restore was announced this Dreamforce as well. There were a few other minor announcements, a lot by Mark Benioff personally. He's announced 100, which is wonderful, $100 million gift to Bay Area schools that's been promised for a while based on target delivery of targets, and that came through. And he's also recommitted or committed Salesforce to a carbon zero approach. So either offsets or zero carbon fuel use, environmentally friendly energy use that's been announced. And I think that's more of those things is better, not worse, definitely.
Yeah.
So that were the biggies. There was a few other lesser ones, certainly some new clouds that have new bundles of apps for certain industries were released and a whole lot more. It was only 2 days in person. You can see behind us here, hopefully, they're packing up. This is traditionally day 3 of Dreamforce, but the in-person sessions are pretty much wrapped up. There's still virtual sessions today. And as you can see, they're packing up. Hopefully next year it's back in a bigger scale where we're all post-COVID and vaccinated, and we can all get along and get some tickets next year.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, it was obviously so much different than what we're used to, not even different than last year, right? Which was still different than 2019. But what do you think, Dave? Was it still a success? I mean, I can see what they did. I can see, the pluses and minuses, but they did pull it off still during the, COVID. So you gotta give them some kudos, right?
Yeah, I do, and I think it was a success. I think the reason it was a success was it's put and so I'm not sure if Salesforce is the first to do a live conference post-COVID, but it certainly would be the most recognized post-COVID conference in person. And even though it was a limited crowd size, I think it's a success because it puts a flag in the ground. Like it signals to people that certainly from Salesforce's perspective, we're all going to try and get as back to normal as we can as soon as possible.
The end is near.
The end is near, hopefully. So it's a positive step. I think it was a success in that regard. It's a good branding exercise as well to have a live in-person event. And as always, they run things beautifully.
Yeah, they did.
So it was slick. I couldn't sneak in, so it was definitely controlled. There was
not without trying though.
Lots of security and hoardings to keep us out. So it was good. And next year I'd love a ticket.
Yeah, me too. Hey, Mark, please listen. We would really appreciate that.
Mark down my name.
As an OEM partner of Censure, you would think we should be there, right?
We will be next year.
So I guess I think we both think it was a success, lessons learned, stuff like that. But what do we think is going to happen next year that's going to be different? I'm hoping that we have the full 100,000, Salesforce people here. But what else do you think is coming that we should talk about?
I think I've experienced over the last 12 months an enormous number of conferences virtually.
Yeah.
They tend to be hard to run and hard to deliver effectively.
Yeah.
Certainly some I've attended from Oracle and Amazon and others and Adobe were not the greatest experience as an external user. For a couple of those I was overseas, so it was even worse. There was a lot of lag. But I think even locally they had some problems streaming to service the numbers. I think the Salesforce conference was much better than that. I think they had some streaming problems up front, but then that got solved only a couple of hours in. So there's obviously some bandwidth found. So I would say it was a big success. I think lessons for next year would be if there are still limited numbers, and I suspect there's every likelihood there may be limited numbers, be on top of the streaming thing straight away. Decide the policy on chat. David and I were talking about the chat issue and the dissension amongst some people and the cries for Disney Plus amongst others. And I mean, I think that with good moderation, you don't need to shut down customers chatting at a conference like that. I think you need to engage them. And when people may say, "Oh, I wish I could have come. You know, why didn't I get a ticket?" Or, you know, "Why the limited numbers? That's not right. We should have done it this way." I think the moderator can engage those sorts of questions in chat and ask people, say, "Okay, we'll accept the feedback and let's ask everybody. Let's run a poll. Who here? You obviously some of you are unhappy. How would you like to run the chat next year or the conference next year? What would you have done in this situation with limited numbers?" So have a nice dialogue with customers rather than just turn.
And I don't know what Slack's all about, Dave. It's two-way communication. It would have been a perfect opportunity, even though you don't want to hear that. Yeah. You still need to understand that to help your customers in the future. So your point is just that's what you should be doing for your customers anyways.
Yeah, so I think lessons for the future is make sure that we're on the invite list. I think, get the chat moderation to engage and get a dialogue happening with your customers would be good. I think the streaming service having sufficient bandwidth from the start when most people are watching and the expectations are set would be good.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it's always a pretty slick event. They do a great job.
What would you like to see next year? Assuming we got maybe half or more of the crowd that we didn't see this year, is there anything special you think you'd really like to see?
If this crowd was the same size?
Yeah, next year.
What I mean, and again, it's not me to dictate to Salesforce. They're one of the best marketers on the planet. I think if you were limited in the numbers next year, if it's 1,000 people or whatever it is, you could certainly run 1,000-person events in 15 countries or 16 countries. Yeah. I think cities. I think technology allows that now. You can have multiple venues in different cities. So you can have 1,000 people here, 1,000 people on the East Coast, maybe 1,000 people somewhere in Asia and Europe, and at least expand the reach of the in-person attendance.
Yeah.
And coordinate it all virtually anyway. But then 3, 4, 5, 6 times more people could get to experience Dreamforce. So if there are still limited numbers next year, I'd be running multi-city events. It will probably add to the cost. But as always, you've got to look at the benefit of these things. But if there's no limits, I think this year's conference was run pretty much as well as it could have been run.
I think so too. So now that we have a good idea what Salesforce is doing, you know, I know Sensure's had some really big closes recently. So since we're a sales company, why don't we talk about what Sensure's plans are for the next year? What's the new features and benefits are coming out that are even more amazing than what's already out there?
Well, I think our application, and in the show notes below, we'll have some lists to our website and our blog. We're happy to arrange demos or test drives running on it. But as I said before, it's an upgrade to the standard sales app in Salesforce.com. Comes with a lot of configuration that we do for each of our customers.
For free? Was that free? You said
it's included in the
free.
And you know, we're happy to talk to anyone at any time to see if there's a fit or not. But in terms of Dreamforce and Censure, I think next year we would definitely have our Slack integration sorted. It kind of is now. But we'll be launching that. We'd love to, if we can get participation in the event with stands and with foods and things, we would do that. We've got some new features coming, but we'll probably talk about closer to the date. But I think in the next 12 months, it's an exciting year for us.
So you're not going to let us know any of those things. You're keeping it all under wraps, so we have to wait.
Yeah, I think if I broadcast them here, we might find them.
Our competitors will jump on this. Well, we've got so many viewers. I can certainly understand why that's a concern. As a CEO, you do have to be careful with that.
Yeah, and I think the Slack integration will be a big one. We're planning some pretty exciting things with our product Censure on Slack. We began the Slack journey when Slack first launched. So we were an early adopter of Slack, switched to Teams, largely for cost reasons because we were already paying for Microsoft Suite. So the switch back to Slack has been welcome, and it's something that was familiar to us anyway. So we'd already thought about a couple of years back how Sentia could work with Slack. So that'll be a big focus over the next few months for us and attempting here in Australia.
That's interesting. Well, we appreciate that, Dave. I guess the other thing to talk about is over the next 6 months, I noticed that you've got some really nice white papers already up there. You just did a couple sales process papers. And my understanding is there's going to be more of these live interviews. It seems like if the folks that are watching today have suggestions and stuff, we're looking for articles and topics such as anything for sales process, CRM adoption. How can I improve my sales team? How can I motivate my sales team to utilize their CRM? How do we clean up the data? How do we do the lead ranking? You know, obviously Sentia does lead ranking automatically, but for some companies, if they don't have Sentia, how do you prioritize which leads we're looking for? So we're asking our listeners, if you'd be so kind, please give us some ideas that you'd like to hear about, and we'll see what we can do about lining it up.
Definitely. And I think, as I said in the show notes, I'll put some links, but we do have white papers on driving CRM adoption up. And a lot of the measures don't require a lot of cost or our application necessarily. But I encourage everyone to take a look. We had a live stream from a similar, just
yesterday
behind the fence here on sales process with Eric. And that was a really interesting conversation. There's a lot of nuggets in there that I think could add value to people.
Absolutely.
And we've got some more plans coming up on some meaty topics. So we've got to add value than just talk for the sake of talking. So if anyone has suggestions, by all means, pop them in the comments on our YouTube channel. And I look forward to chatting to all of you at some point.
Yeah, and also you can go to sentiacorp.com/Sentia says, and we have articles on customers, technology, sales process, marketing, branding, eco work, fintech, Wall Street banks. We've got dozens and dozens of articles. And we also bring on guest authors. So if you have a really interesting topic you'd like to write about, please feel free to give it to us. And if it looks good, we're happy to bring you on as a guest author as well. Dave, I think we're getting close to it. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Dreamforce is a wrap behind us. They're just about packed up. The sign will come down any minute. We're hoping to time it with the sign being pulled down. But
hey, you do that whistle, Dave?
Time to go.
Well, we're not very good at whistling, so they missed the signal.
It's been a pleasure. So signing off from Dreamforce 2021. And you never know what will pop up soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.